Hey guys, Mr. Balin here. We're going to learn how to find the midpoint between 2 points and then also some other situations involving midpoint. When you hear midpoint, the word mid is short for middle. Nice, right? It's the middle point. And middle is code for average of 2. It's code for the average of 2 things. All right, so what does that mean? Well, in order to find the midpoint, you need to find the average point, or the average of the 2 points. For example, an average, how do we do that? If you made an 80 on a test, and then you made a 100 on the next test, and I said, okay, what is your test average? How would you get the average grade for the 2 tests? There's a few ways to do it. But the way most of you are going to probably do it is you're going to add the 2 test grades and divide by 2. And you're like, okay, I got a 90 on that test. We're going to do a very similar thing when we're working with coordinates, with points. So we're on a coordinate plane again, and we're going to have 2 points. They can be anywhere. It doesn't matter where. So I'm going to pick a spot up here, pick a spot over here. I'm going to make a spot up. We'll say this is like -4, 1. And maybe up here we are like at 5, 7. I don't know. Just making something up. So those are my 2 points. And I need the spot that's directly in the middle. So if I were to connect these with a line segment, I want the location that is right in the middle of the 2. So it's a lot like what I just did with the 80 and the 100. We're going to add them and divide by 2. Well, how do you add 2 coordinates? We have the coordinate -4, 1, and we're going to add 5, 7. Notice I'm kind of stacking them up. The reason being is that these are my x values and these are my y values. You cannot add unlike terms in math. I can't add the -4 and the 7 together. I can't do it. No. Those are unlike terms. I can only add x with x. So we're going to add and then divide by 2. I don't like kind of looking at it like that, but that's what we're doing. We're adding the x's and we're going to divide by 2. I'm going to write it like this: -4 plus 5, and then we're going to divide by 2. When I do that, I get -1 divided by 2, or -1/2. I'm going to do the same thing with the y values. 1 plus 7 divided by 2. The y values are 1 and 7. It's like you got a 1 on a test. Your next test, you got a 7. So y's value, the average y would be 1 plus 7 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. And that is a coordinate, that is the midpoint. -1/2, 4 is the middle of these 2 spots. That's pretty cool, right? So we're going to add and divide by 2. I'm going to do a couple more examples just so we can see it. So here we go. Number 1, let's say we have 3, 6 and -3, 12. Just making some stuff up. We're going to add the x's. What are my x's? 3 and -3. It's going to be 3 plus -3. We're going to add them and divide by 2. Well, 3 plus -3, that's 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0. Comma, it's a coordinate, so those are my x's. We're going to do the same thing with the y values. My y values are 6 and 12. I'm going to add 6 and 12, and I'm going to divide it by 2. 6 plus 12 is 18, divided by 2 is 9. So the middle point is 0, 9. Now, something people do, the number one mistake people make is because, when we did distance, we were subtracting numbers. We're figuring out how far apart they are. I see people do this. They take the 6 and the 12. I see them do 12 minus 6 divided by 2. Well, 12 minus 6 would be 6 divided by 2 is 3. And you'll tell me that's the answer, that's the middle. I want you to think real hard. You're telling me that 3 is the middle of 6 and 12. 3 is not even in between 6 and 12. So if you get on a test or quiz and you're stuck, you're like, man, I don't remember. Do I add and divide by 2? Do I subtract and divide by 2? What do I do? Just test it out real quick. If you subtract and divide by 2, it's not going to be in the middle for sure. It may not even be in between the 2 numbers. But like if I look at my number 9 here, So we have 6, 9, and 12. Think about that number 9. So here are my y values. y1 is 6, y2 is 12, and I think, right here, I think the middle is supposed to be 9. How could I test that out? One way you could do it is take that number 9. How far is it to 6? Well, that's 3. How far is it to 12? Oh, that's also 3. If it's in the middle, shouldn't it be the exact same distance to both sides? Yeah. You can do the same thing with the x value as well. So you can actually test it out. So actually, let's just do it real quick. x1 is 3. x2 is -3. And I think that the middle is 0. Right? What my guess here? That the middle x was 0. So how far is it? How far is it from 0 to 3? Well, that's 3. How far is it from 0 to -3? Also 3. So again, it should be the exact same distance to both ends. So to find the middle, we're going to add and divide by 2. Let's do another example real quick. And then we're going to do some other uses. Let's say we have 10, 20, and 12, -2. I don't know. Just making some numbers up. Doesn't matter. X values, we're going to add 10 and 12, and we're going to divide by 2. That is going to be 11. Y values, we're going to add them and divide by 2. That's going to be 9. So the middle x is 11, the middle y is 9, the middle point would be 11, 9. That's it. That's midpoint. You can kind of test it, like how far is the number 11? How far is it to 10? 1. How far is it to 12? 1. It should be the same distance from both of those ends. So we call these endpoints, and this is called the midpoint. That's important because I'm going to ask you some different questions. So what if I told you that I have an endpoint of 6, 3 and a midpoint? So this is an end, and this is a midpoint of 4, -9. So what could I do? I have an end, I have the middle, I want the other end. And I'm just going to call those x, y. I don't know what they are, but I know that there's some x, y. There's 2 ways to get there. Well, there's probably more than 2, but there's 2 ways that I usually see students do. The first one, I think, is the easier one, is you look at just your x's. It might be a little confusing at first, but we have x's of 6, that's an end, 4, that's the middle, and then I'm going to call it x, that's the other end. Well, how far is it from 4 to 6? That's 2 away. Now, it does matter. Is it +2 or -2? To go from 4 to 6, you're adding 2, right? If I start at 4 and I travel to 6, I've added 2. So it's +2 to that end. So how far does it need to be to the other end? Well, it's got to also be 2, but it can't be +2 again, because what is 4 + 2? That's 6 again. I don't want it to be 6. It can't be the same spot as the other end. It needs to be -2. So if I added to go to one end, I got to subtract to go to the other end. So I know that x would be 4 - 2, which is 2. I do the same thing with my y values. I know that's kind of confusing. We'll practice it in a second. But look at just the y values. My first end has a y value of 3. My midpoint has a y value of -9. And I want the other end. So let's take a look here. If I'm at -9, I'm standing at the middle. How far have I gone to get to +3? I've added 12 to get to +3. So how far would I go to get to the other side? Has to be 12. Has to be the same distance. But if I add 12 again, I'm going to end up at +3 again. I don't want to be at +3. I already have one at +3. I got to be on the other end, so it's got to be -12. So if I do -9 - 12, now I'm chilling over here at -21. So my y value is at -21. So the coordinate would be 2, -21. That is the coordinate of the other end. There are other ways to do it. I'm just going to show you another way to do it real quick. I'm not going to do it this way real often. Actually, this will probably be the only time I do it, but just if you want to do it this way, you can. Is you could treat it like the problem up here. You could take the endpoint, right? Because, like this would be an endpoint. You could do endpoint plus endpoint divided by 2, just like we did here. What would that look like? It would be endpoint 6 plus endpoint x divided by 2. The only difference is we know what the middle is. We know the answer has to be 4. So whereas we were looking for the middle before, this time we know the middle. We know that the middle is 4. So now we have an Algebra 1 problem. Well, we're going to have to multiply both sides by 2. We'll get 6 plus x equals 8. So x has to equal 2. And then we do that same process with the y values. So again, with the y values, what are the y values? 3 and y. So for the y values, you would do 3 plus y divided by 2, and we know the answer has to be -9. So again, we would multiply both sides by 2. I'm not going to show all that work, but you multiply both sides by 2, you'd get 3 plus y equals -18. You would subtract 3 from both sides, and you would get -21. And if you notice, that's the exact same thing. This is my x and this is my y. It's the same numbers. Either way is good. I think that the original way is a lot faster once you know how to do it. So we're going to do another example here. Let's say we have an endpoint of 4, 12, a midpoint of -1, 15, and I want the other end. I'm going to call x, y. If you read the questions on the reviews and things like that, they won't put the x, y like that. I'm doing this because it helps me see it. All right, so I'm asking myself, I'm looking at the x's. And you can write it out like this every time. That's fine. But you could even just do it. I mean, it's already kind of written out for you. If you focus on just the x's. 4, if you start at -1 and you travel to 4, how far have you gone? You've added 5. Right? So how do I go to the next x? Well, I don't want to add 5. I want to subtract 5. And that would land me at -6. So x has to be -6. I'm going to do the same thing with the y values. I'm starting at 15. I go to 12. 15, that would be -3 to get to 12. So what do I do to go to the new y? I'd have to add 3, landing me at 18. So my answer here would be -6, 18. So we had the middle. We're trying to find both ends. Good stuff. Let's do one more real quick. Say we have an endpoint of -2, -7, a middle of 0, 5, and we want to find the other end. I'll call it x, y. Same idea is I'm at the middle. That's -2 to go backwards. So I need to go +2. So that's going to land me at +2. I'm at the middle for the y values. I go backwards. 5 to -7. I've subtracted 12. So how do I go forwards? I've got to add 12. So 5 plus 12 lands me at 17. And we're done. We know that this has to be the other end. Could you check your work? Yeah. Once you know the two ends, could you just do the midpoint formula? Yes, you could. What would the midpoint formula tell us to do? They would tell us to do -2 plus 2, add the x's and divide by 2. Well, that would be 0 divided by 2 is 0, comma. Do the same thing with the y values. -7 plus 17 divided by 2. That'd be 24. Wait, what did I just do? -7 plus 17. Sorry, that'd be 10. Divided by 2 would be 5. 24. What was I doing? Okay. Is 0, 5, is that where the, yeah, that's where the middle is. So we just kind of guaranteed we got the right spot. We know it has to be 2, 17. All right, one more situation we're going to go over. What if I told you that Q is 1/4 the distance from P to R. And then I tell you that P has coordinates 6, 12, and I don't know, 10, -8. I don't know, just making up some stuff. And I want to know, where is the location that is 1/4 the distance from P to R? So this is going to be a little bit harder. So I have a number line here. I like looking at number lines. So, or like a line segment here, P and R. I don't know where they are on the coordinate plane. I don't care too much about that. I'm going to call this spot M for midpoint. That would be where the middle is, but that's not what I want. I want 1/4 of the way from P to R. So it's going to be closer to P than it is to R. This is going to be 1/4 of the way. This would be 3/4 of the way. And this, of course, would be halfway. Okay. So I'm wanting to find the coordinate 1/4 of the way. There are two ways that you could do this. And I honestly don't care how you get it done as long as you have a way that's good for you, but I'm only going to show you the way that most students are most successful with. And that is to get the midpoint first. So that's the first thing we're going to do. And then once I have this midpoint, 1/4 of the way would be the middle of P and M. So I'm going to get M, the midpoint, first. How do I do that? I add my x's and divide by 2. That gets me 8, comma, the same thing with the y's. I'm going to add my y's and divide by 2, and that gets me 2. So the midpoint here is at 8, 2. So I have a midpoint of 8, 2. Remember, this is 6, 12. And then R would be at 10, -8. Okay. So now I know that this is at 8, 2. Now it's not a lot of work. I just need to do the midpoint one more time. I need the middle of P and M. So the middle of P and M, make a little separation here, would be x plus x for P and M. That would be 7. When you do 8 plus 6 divided by 2, it would be 7. And then y plus y divided by 2 would be 12 plus 2 divided by 2. That's also 7. So this spot here would be 7, 7. Boom. And that is the location that's 1/4 of the way. If I had asked you for a location 3/4 of the way, you would do the exact same thing. You would have got the midpoint and then get the midpoint of M and R. If it was 3/4 of the way, that means it's farther than halfway, and it's going to be that midpoint of M and R. All right, guys, that was a lot of information. I'll see you next time.